Welcome to the Slow Smoked Pigskin podcast. I'm Darren.
And I mean Drew. And this is
our podcast.
What are you doing? You're not Aaron.
You're not Drew.
I think we should go.
That was weird, right?
Yeah, it was.
Anyways, I'm Aaron,
I'm Drew.
and this is our podcast.
Subscribe.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 30 of the Slow Smoke Pigskin podcast. We made another milestone or something, I guess, right?
We're at the dirty 30, right?
Yeah, dirty 30. God, that feels like so long ago. Oh, wait, it was.
It was.
All right, I got no league news. Nothing's happened. Nobody's said anything about a You Betcha board, is what it is. NFL news, since we last recorded, there hasn't been a whole lot. I mean, preseason games have been happening, so we're getting minor injuries here and there. The biggest news is we talked about the potential for J.J. McCarthy surgery and what might happen. Well, we got the answer, and the answer was that he needed a full meniscus repair, and he's going to miss his entire rookie season, which is a bummer in multiple senses. You know, he already wasn't going to be the starter at the beginning, likely, but now he's not playing all year. I don't know how I feel about what that does for Justin Jefferson. Like, Sam Darnold is a veteran and has played, but he's also never been a prolific passer, so we'll see.
No, he played with the Niners, and I don't know how he did there, but he probably hasn't had a Justin Jefferson caliber wide receiver, someone that
not quite, but he had DJ Moore in Carolina.
Yeah, but DJ, that was a different type of team. Like this,
Yeah.
The Vikings are a little bit better team than the Panthers were at that time. I picked up Donaldson in the offseason, so I'm ecstatic about it.
You mean Darnold?
What did I say? Donaldson?
Yeah.
I don't know why I was thinking. Yes, Darnold.
Okay.
You knew who I was talking about.
I was verifying.
I think that a slightly more important issue with this is who's going to be the backup to the backup. I know you had mentioned earlier to me in our talks off camera was Tannehill. I don't know if anything's actually come through, but
they signed Matt Corral, who was a backup in Carolina. I'm not sure how that one's really going to help, but
my only point is if he can't. If he doesn't perform in the first couple of weeks, are they going to go to another veteran backup? So that just might be someone that, if you need a quarterback to fill a spot, might be something to keep in mind.
I mean, they still got Nick Mullins there, who I think will play if something happened to Darnold, but I don't see anyone else coming in who's actually going to potentially usurp Darnold as the starter. Not with what's out there right now.
Right.
They should trade for Kirk Cousins. You know, the Falcons got Penix. What do they need Kirk Cousins for?
Yeah, that's a hefty contract you got to absorb.
It was just a joke since he
came from there. I know. Right. They should have kept him.
Okay. Honestly, the Vikings have had a rough go of it because, you know, they had a rookie or they had their young cornerback die. Then Jordan Addison got arrested. Then now JJ's out, and then Jordan Addison got hurt. He was carted off the field during practice, apparent ankle injury. He's going to miss some time, but I don't know if it's going to be time getting into the season or just the rest of the preseason. But
can you be injured and serve your suspension at the same time?
Yeah, he should hope. Unfortunately, he's got no chance. He's he doesn't even have a court date for a while, and they'll kick the case. I mean, look, Rashee Rice, we still don't even know what's going on with, which is just crazy.
It goes away, and then all of a sudden it's here's a 1 or 2 game suspension. Here you go, bye.
Right. And then you going back to one of our previous sagas.
My favorite topic right now.
Yeah, the latest on Brandon Ayuk is now that trade talks have slowed down with the Steelers and he's close to a deal with the 49ers again.
My understanding of it is that he's willing to go to Pittsburgh, but Pittsburgh's not willing to give up what the Niners want. The contracts are pretty similar. The contract is better in Pittsburgh that they're offering, but the Niners can't get enough in return. And the Niners are willing to give him close to that 30 mil. It's just, last I heard was that it's the amount of years that Ayuk wants on the contract. So
Hey, at least there's news and they're talking. Like, I don't even hear anything about
I've only heard good things about both sides. Like, everybody's like kind of somewhat happy with what's going on. The only thing I'm worried about, and I don't want to jinx it, but you don't get a contract before the start of the season, and Ayuk goes down in week 2, and then it's like, well, you're not going to get a contract.
I understand the concern, but the likelihood of that, if you're a top receiver like he is, even if he got hurt this year, somebody will still sign him next year.
100%. 100%.
Like, is there a chance it might be slightly less money? Maybe, but like,
yeah.
If it's something, well, I mean, unless it's like an Achilles or something, right? If it's an ACL,
Achilles and right.
I mean, an ACL these days is not considered like. I remember 10, 15 years ago, if you tore an Achilles, your career was potentially over. Right. Now it's like, all right, cool, you'll be back in a year-ish.
You basically get a year. You get a year off, and you get to rebuild, and you get to Which is going back to JJ. It's like that's probably not a bad thing for him. He has a year to learn an offense. Yes, he's not going to be game speed, but he's going to have that. This might make him a better quarterback going into year 2.
We'll see. All right, into today's topic. So, with all the preseason games starting, almost every team started to release their initial depth charts for the year. And these are fun. Now, we got to take it to an extent with a grain of salt because this is the initial depth chart. Things are going to change over the offseason, over the preseason. Also, depending on what source you look at online, there's different depth charts. I tried to focus on not the ones on like ESPN and instead the ones from press releases if I could find them. But there's just some interesting conversations based on who was listed as starters and who wasn't at certain positions on certain teams. We're going to start today with the AFC, and we'll do the NFC in a subsequent episode. So to start, let's start with the AFC East, and I just pulled out a list of the teams, and they're in alphabetical order. So there's no order of importance. It's just divisions in alphabetical order. So let's start with the AFC. What?
The last I checked, J came before P, but that's
okay. Then I guess they weren't. You're right.
I think it's more of this is how the AFC East is going to end up. That's okay.
Okay, so it's actually by team name because you get Buffalo Bills, Miami Dolphins,
my fault.
New England Patriots, and New York Jets.
Gotcha.
All right. Anyways, so looking at the depth chart for the Bills, the only positional depth chart that was interesting to me was wide receiver, considering how many questions there are up in the air. By the way, one other thing I should mention about these depth charts is that these initial depth charts do tend to lean towards veteran players a lot of times and making rookies earn their spot. So if you see a rookie not in the starting lineup, it could mean they haven't had a good enough camp or preseason, or it could just mean it's going to change before the regular season. So Bills wide receiver, right now, they listed their starters as Mac Hollins, Khalil Shakir, and Curtis Samuel. Now, they got a bunch of other wide receivers on the team. They've got technically Chase Claypool's on there, but he's on IR for the year. But they've also got Keon Coleman, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, and KJ Hamler. So they've got a bunch, but right now, like I said, Keon Coleman, who a lot of Dynasty folks have been a little hot and bothered on, isn't currently listed as a starter. Like I said, it's early and they may change, but it's interesting that they started with Mac Hollins.
Yeah, I think with some of these rookies, it's they don't have a full playbook yet. They're still learning terminology and different routes, and they're trying to figure out what they do best. Obviously, they can watch all the college football tape that they want and combine, but it's like that doesn't translate to practice field. And if you look, Coleman has the least amount of reps out of anybody on there, so they're not going to list him as a day one starter, at least in the middle of the preseason. But they're going to have special plays for him. They're going to have packages for him. He's going to be out there at least 50% of the time. Like the guy's got the skills to be an NFL wide receiver.
I had heard a report a week or two back that there was reports that he was having a tough time learning the playbook, so it could have something to do with that.
Right.
That was the only one that was interesting on the Bills to me. The Dolphins, they're pretty set at wide receiver and running back. However, they signed Jonnu Smith this year at tight end, who I thought could be an interesting weapon for them. Jonnu Smith, everyone thinks he's getting older, but he got some useful work last year in Atlanta. But Durham Smythe is actually listed as the starting tight end over Jonnu Smith. So that was interesting if you were thinking about taking a late round flyer on Jonnu in any type of dynasty any type of fantasy format.
That offense with McDaniel, he does a lot of matchups. So I think that it depends on who they're playing that week, and he also likes to ride the hot hand. So if you get one of the tight ends that's kind of gets on a roll, he's probably going to go with that one, and then he may switch back and forth. So that's one of those things where, as a fantasy owner, it's like he's one of those tight ends are going to be like the bye week. I got to fill somebody with him because I don't know if either one of them is actually going to put up. The points that you want to start them week in and week out.
The Dolphins have so many other weapons
that
I wouldn't be chasing the Dolphins tight end, but
the lack of tight ends in the league in fantasy that can score points. Like again, if you have one, this is going to be a filler week.
Yep. All right, Patriots. There's actually their depth chart wasn't actually released yet when I was doing this research. It might have been by now, and if it did, sorry, my bad. But they listed Jacoby Brissett as the starting quarterback over Drake May, Joe Milton, and Bailey Zappi, which was expected. The first preseason game, Brissett took the initial snaps, didn't look that great, and then I think Drake May had a rushing touchdown, if I remember correctly. So I think we're looking at Brissett to start the season, and then Drake May coming in at some point. Joe Milton, as we talked about, had a good preseason performance when he got an opportunity, albeit it was against second or third string defenses. But he's an interesting character, and if they've got Brissett, May, and Milton, I wonder if Zappi even makes the team at that point.
I was watching the Hard Knocks with the Bears, and I thought I heard them say that they can now carry 4 quarterbacks. That might there's a new rule that said something like that. Because they normally always carry the 3, but just because they have 4 quarterbacks that they're going, that obviously they've got Caleb Williams, and this is a side note, but that's just something that I had caught when I was watching it. But
I don't know about I know they changed the rules so that on game day you have 2 quarterbacks active, and then you can have a third quarterback that's listed as an emergency quarterback who's only allowed to play if the first two go down. They changed that rule after that 49ers versus Eagles game where Purdy got hurt, and then I think their backup at the time was Josh Johnson got hurt, and that's when Purdy came in with his torn elbow or whatever it was and couldn't really throw the ball. And they almost they just handed it off repeatedly. They almost had McCaffrey play quarterback that game.
I remember that.
So they changed the rules so that if both of them go down, you can have this third guy, but you can't have the third guy come in any other situation.
Right. But, anyway. But I agree with you on that. I don't think Milton's gonna get. He might have a couple of packages where they
Nah.
throw him out there. He might go out there if they need a Hail Mary.
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean?
He's got a hell of a
If they-
strong arm, right?
At the goal line, if they want him to run the ball or something like that. But I think Brissett's going to start, and then May will come in, even if it's as early as like week 2 or week 3. I don't know their schedule, but they're gonna they're not gonna let May just start week 1.
No, a lot of times they'll do the transition at their bye weekend. I don't know offhand when the Patriots' bye is. So the other position of interest for the Patriots is the wide receiver, because they had like 18 guys in that room, I felt like, competing. And the initial depth chart I saw listed the starters as Kendrick Bourne, Demario Pop Douglas, and Jalen Polk, the rookie. So ironically, I just realized when I wrote this, Juju hadn't been released yet.
We touched on that last week.
Yeah, he has now. But they also have KJ Osborne on this roster, Tyquan Thornton, who was I think a first-round pick a couple years ago, super fast guy, Javon Baker, who was a draft pick this year, Jalen Reagor, former first-round pick who never amounted to anything, and then Kayshon Boutte, or Butte, I can never remember how it's pronounced. But
I don't know.
I know it's either Booty or Butte. But he was drafted for them within the past couple of years as well, but had disappointed thus far. So, yeah, I mean, like I said, there were so many names out there you don't know what to do with, and it was just interesting, the ones that showed up as the starters to me.
I'm happy with Jalen Polk. I think he was my 4th or 5th pick of the draft, and like, he's not going to be a number 1 this year by any means, but I mean, I like the fact that he's on there. And I think obviously they're gonna get passing yards, right? Like a team has to do that. So I feel like if you need someone to throw in there in a bye week, like a Patriots wide receiver is not like you get one of those top ones that you could maybe get a trade, and hopefully something works out where you can just kind of throw that player in to sweeten the deal. But I'm not hopeful with the Patriots this year very much as far as
I was just thinking about it. I can't remember. Kendrick Bourne, I know, was hurt, so I can't remember if he'll actually be back for the start of the season. I haven't looked that up, but either way, like you said, these aren't real fantasy options that you want to be hopping on board with right now.
No, not really.
All right, so the Jets, they listed Braylon Allen as the RB2 behind Breece, which was a question coming into camp. Obviously, as a rookie, we know he's not taking over Breece, but it sounds like he has solidly taken that second spot.
Let me ask you a question real quick. Running back 2, running back 3, like it doesn't mean that they get more reps. It just lists that it really doesn't mean anything. It's just
all it generally means is if something happened, who's the next man up?
Right.
There is it depends on the backfield, right? Because like certain teams, they'll have they'll have an RB1, they'll have like who they list as the RB2, but sometimes that's confusing because if RB1 went down, sometimes the person who's RB3 would actually move because the RB2 role is a specific role where, the pass catching back or something like that.
A third down
and
back.
They've got a different skill set. But this one was intended as Braylon Allen is going to get the first shot at workload if something happens to Breece.
Right.
And then the Jets wide receiver, obviously we know that Garrett Wilson is the number 1. But Mike Williams is supposed to be clear to play, and so he should be 2. And then the question was, what happens over that? For the moment, they listed Xavier Gibson, who's a second-year player who had some flashes last year, as number 2, and they also have, as a starter. And at the moment, they also have Alan Lazard listed as a starter. Although I don't think anybody expects to see Alan Lazard get a whole lot of work anymore. He has just absolutely disappointed.
But him and Rodgers had something in Green Bay, so
maybe I guess there's that possibility. I just wouldn't.
I'm not I'm not going to bet on it, but
I think they brought Lazard in because Rodgers wanted him, but I don't think that I think the rest of the coaching staff and whatnot got very annoyed with him, like his lack of performance last year.
Sure.
And I don't know that Rodgers has the same sway after a year being hurt and everyone being annoyed with that situation.
Yeah.
And they drafted a rookie, Malachi Corley. He's not listed as a starter yet. It'll be interesting to see with him. He's more of a after the catch guy, but so is Xavier Gibson. So yeah. Anyways, moving on to the AFC North. The Ravens, the only thing that was actually interesting to me is I had heard a whole bunch of hype for their running back draft pick, Rasheen Ali, and he was on the initial depth chart listed as the 5th running back. So I had thrown him on my taxi squad after he wasn't drafted, and that's not good news if he's listed as 5th right now.
Not right now, but with the luck that the Ravens have with running backs,
that's true. That's a very good
he
point.
could
They
move
go
up
through like
very
6
quickly.
a year.
Yeah.
All right, Bengals. Right now, Zach Moss was listed as the starter over Chase Brown. I think I mentioned last week that there's been hype going around Chase Brown. Right now, it still looks like Zach Moss will be the starter. But that's one that could potentially change through preseason. At the wide receiver position, their third starting, obviously behind Chase and Higgins, their third starting wide receiver right now is listed as Trenton Irwin, which is only interesting because they've got Andre Yoshivash, who has looked good in spurts, and they've got Jermaine Burton, who's a electric rookie. I think he was out of Alabama, if I remember correctly. Somebody's going to get mad at me for getting that wrong. But either way, he caught a long touchdown pass, I believe, in the last preseason game. So that's an interesting one. And then they've got a couple of tight ends on that team. They signed Mike Gesicki as a free agent, but they listed Drew Sample as the starting tight end over Gesicki and Tanner Hudson, because I think they also re-signed at least one or two of these. So they signed a bunch of these guys. None of these are probably going to be big fantasy impacts, but still just interesting to see.
I'm looking on Sleeper right now, and it actually has Mike Gesicki as the number 1 tight end with Tanner Hudson and then Drew Sample. Not that it makes much of a difference, but if you're looking at Sleeper as your depth chart, it's clearly quite different than some other ones out there. But
interesting,
yeah. But they've got some big wide receivers there, so it's hard to crack. They got how many 8 wide receivers going for one position. Like it's basically what it is.
Yeah.
But that's my 2 cents on it.
Keeping going on the NFC North, the Browns, despite the fact that we know he's going to miss the season, they actually still listed Nick Chubb at the top of the RB depth chart. So we know everybody, like a lot of people like him as a person and like him as a teammate. But he's going to be on the pup. But then they have the second running back as Jerome Ford, which is expected.
Right.
But then the slight surprise to me was that they put Pierre Strong over Deonta Foreman. I don't know if that would have been different had Foreman not had his injury in the preseason where he got helicoptered out, but that's where it stands right now. And then at wide receiver, obviously they got Jerry Jeudy and Amari Cooper. Cedric Tillman had been getting a lot of hype in training camp reports that I've been hearing, but Elijah Moore was still listed as the starter over him. So, yeah. Continuing, we got the Steelers. So Russ is still listed as the starter over Justin Fields. Peek behind the curtain, we're recording on Saturday, and the preseason game today, Russ took the started the game and took the first team reps. So I guess he still does hold the spot over Fields for now. I still think that there's no chance it works that way at the end of the season. That being said, I was messaging with Steve, since Steve's the JJ McCarthy owner in Dynasty. I had texted him when I heard about McCarthy going out, and I was like, what are they going to do? Sign Tannehill maybe? Because he's the best free agent out there? He's like, no, they should send an offer for a late round pick over to the Steelers to pick up Russ. And I was like, that's an interesting idea. It's actually interesting. I don't know that it would happen, but it's an interesting concept. Najee's listed as a starter over Jalen Warren. Once again, the game is going on, I think, as we speak, but Jalen Warren actually exited the game with an injury. I felt like I always knew that Najee was going to be the starter, and Jalen Warren was probably going to be like a third down, mix it up back. He's more explosive, but Najee will get you your 3 yards.
Right.
So we'll see. And then wide receiver, they've obviously George Pickett's the number 1 right now. Van Jefferson is listed as a 2, and then Calvin Austin is listed as the 3. Which is a surprise because I feel like Calvin Austin hasn't got a lot of work in the past in this offense. Roman Wilson, rookie we talked about, got hurt. They got Quez Watkins and Scotty Miller. None of these guys are very exciting. Point is, don't know who the third are going to be, but I don't think you want the second wide receiver on the Steelers right now, let alone the third.
And I think that's almost why Justin Fields is a better fit in Pittsburgh than Russ is, just with his legs. Like you're not passing to anybody, like realistically, like you've got it. But when those guys, because they can double team Pickens, and then are the other 2 guys going to actually do anything? So I think they're going to move to Fields probably, I would say, pretty quickly, as long as he can learn the offense. That might be a struggle.
Unless Ayuk ends up there.
Yeah. I don't think it's going to happen.
No.
If it would have happened, then I think that the Niners like Ayuk too much too, and they know that like Debo's got this year. Maybe he's been injured a lot. Like, how much more does he really have as the number 1 heavy workload? We'll see.
All right. AFC South, the Texans. Now, they don't list an order of who is wide receiver 1, 2, and 3. Their 3 starting wide receivers are obviously Collins, Diggs, and Tank Dell. So there's not a lot of info we could get from that. The only interesting thing I thought was, if you watch the Hall of Fame game, Cam Akers had like a whole bunch of carries, but he's still listed as the like RB5 or 6. So I don't even know if he'll make the team, but
he's had a few bad years, and it's kind of just sticking with him. And I think it's going to take a lot more than one preseason game to bump him up.
The Colts. Trey Sermon is listed as the RB2. He's the solid backup right now to Jonathan Taylor, but I think he had a minor injury that hopefully that's not going to mess that up. Either way, it doesn't matter unless something happens to Jonathan Taylor. Rookie wide receiver Adonai Mitchell is listed as a co-starter with Alec Pierce, which is interesting because would have thought that he could easily beat out Alec Pierce.
Mm-hmm.
But there was a report the other day that Josh Downs had some injury that may cost him some time. If that happens, then that may allow Adonai Mitchell to get on the field sooner. Mm-hmm. If he can get on the field and show something, then maybe he is the second or third wide receiver. Otherwise, it was looking like there was a chance that he wasn't going to be one of the top 3, which is just interesting. Yeah, considering he was was he end up being a second or a third round pick? I think second. He was
it was late second. I want to say
it was second because there was talks of him potentially going in the first, and then he slipped to the second.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that's just a weird dynamic. Maybe it's how these coaches do these games, and it's like, oh, if you don't list him as a starter, as a top 3, we don't have to worry about him as other teams prepare. And it's like, and then all of a sudden they throw them in there. So there could be some gamesmanship to this. Like
we said, you got to take these, especially these initial ones, to an extent with a grain of salt, but it's still some interesting.
We've still got one more week of preseason before 2 more. Is it over?
Preseason?
We got 1 more week, right?
3.
I thought they've already played. They've already played 3 games.
No, most
Two?
teams are playing their second game this weekend.
Oh, I thought they were. I thought they were cutting it down. No, you're right. Because I was thinking, yeah, it's September. Whatever. I don't know. There's still plenty of time for these to move around.
Exactly. Jaguars, there was nothing surprising to me. It all looked as I expected. So, the Titans, they listed Pollard and Spears as co-starters, which just, I think this is what everybody was kind of worried about, was that they were going to cannibalize each other's fantasy value. And so it's looking like it will likely be the case.
Right. If anything, it only helps Spears' value by making him, he's a starter, so he's worth more. But realistically, like, they're both worth number 2 backs, like, at this point.
Yep. Calvin Ridley's listed as the starter, as with DeAndre Hopkins and Tyler Boyd. Now, obviously, DeAndre Hopkins is hurt, so don't know what's going to happen with that. They've got Treylon Burks, who, they traded up and gave away AJ Brown for, what was that, 2 years ago, 3 years ago? And he hasn't showed up. So I don't know. Maybe he'll get a chance with Hopkins going down. But that's, other than Calvin Ridley, I don't know that I want to touch any wide receiver. I don't know that I want to touch anyone on that team, period, other than Calvin Ridley. AFC West. So in the initial depth chart, they listed Jarrett Stidham as the number 1 quarterback, Zach Wilson at 2, and Bo Nix at 3. I feel like this is some Sean Payton bullshit.
100%.
Rookie's got to earn it. I'd be shocked if Bo Nix is not the week 1 starter.
Yeah.
Like,
I've seen a few things on the interweb, and Bo Nix is like, he's looking better than expected. So
I mean, he's literally has the most college football games started ever.
Yeah.
Like
60 something, I want to say.
I think it was 60. I think it was 60 on the dot, but still, like, if 60 college games doesn't get you more ready for the pros than these kids who only play college for 2 or 3 years, then you don't deserve it. But at the wide receiver, they actually have Tim Patrick listed as a starting wide receiver, which is a surprise to me, considering there's so much hype over Marvin Mims. So many people like Marvin Mims and his ability. And last year, Sean Payton kept saying crap like, oh, yeah, we need to get Mims more work. And then he's not listed as a starter. So that one's, I don't know. And Troy Franklin, with the other names they have there, and the fact that he dropped to the 4th round, I don't know how much of a chance Franklin's going to get.
Yeah, I mean, again, I have Cortland Sutton on my team, and on Sleeper he's listed as 1. They extended him.
Sorry, I didn't even list Cortland Sutton because he was the obvious one. Sorry.
Okay,
I forgot to go past.
You said 1, and I was like, hold on a second.
Yeah, sorry.
Sutton's 1, Franklin's
and then
2.
Tim Patrick, and then these other guys.
Yeah.
And then at the running back, they've got Javonte listed as the starter, which should be expected, but there has been such conflicting reports coming out of Broncos camps. Like, one guy says, like, oh, I think Javante's on the roster bubble, and then somebody else is like, oh, he's far and away the number 1 and might be back to what people hope from him. So
it's Sean Payton playing these fun games that he likes to, because he gets bored.
I am not a fan of him. And I've heard stories that he is a garbage human and, like, treats people. Anyways,
Bounty Gate, what do they call it?
Exactly.
Like, we already know that his character is in question.
Right. Then Jaleel McLaughlin, who was showed some interesting flashes last year. He's actually listed as RB3 on the team. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how this one actually pans out. And then Adam Troutman was listed as the starting tight end over Greg Dulcich. Greg Dulcich was one of those guys who started to flash in his rookie year, but then he's had some injuries. I thought, a year or two, they were when Peyton first showed up, he was talking about, like, oh, I could use Dulcich as a joker, kind of like the way he used to use Taysom Hill and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But we'll see what happens with that. Right now, Troutman's listed as a starter. The Chiefs, Clyde Edwards-Hilaire's listed as the backup running back right now, which I've heard bad camp reports, even though they re-signed him. So that one was a slight surprise. And then initially they had listed Hollywood Brown and Rashee Rice as their two starting wide receivers. But with Brown's injury not being there at the beginning of the year, the second one's kind of up in the air. Will it be Justin Watson? Will it be Xavier Worthy as the rookie? Worthy caught a touchdown pass today because he just blew by a defender, but he's just so little that it's tough.
Yeah, he's gonna be good, and yes, he's gonna be very Hill-like, but he needs to put some meat on. Otherwise, you just put a hand on him and he's just gonna go flying.
One interesting.
Who else was? I was watching that game a little bit, and granted, it was the third quarter, but I mean, Mecole Hardman was still out there, and he was
the third quarter.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't know when he started. If he was in the second, and if he's just out there getting reps, but like he was still part of the offense, and they
still got Mecole Hardman. I saw Kadarius Toney. They still got Kadarius Toney. They still got Sky Moore, so they got a lot of names.
Yeah.
And they need somebody to step
up. But those, I mean, out of those that you just mentioned, like Mecole Hardman kind of seems the one that's kind of proven himself more than the other two. Obviously, he should be a running back.
Or just a returner.
He can catch that ball, but he can't catch anything else. That's crazy. But
all right. The Raiders right now, they've listed their starting quarterback as Aiden O'Connell or Gardner Minshew. It's like, wait, what? How do you list or? So I guess that one is still yet to be determined.
If Minshew has produced, I've seen a few different stats here and there, and he's up there with Trevor Lawrence stats. He's up there with who else? There was another quarterback that signed a contract that it was they're like, why they give him the contract? But because Minshew, and it's just because he's a smaller guy and he doesn't. But if I'm the Raiders, I'm okay with Minshew being the quarterback.
I don't know. We'll see.
O'Connell wasn't super impressive
impressive
last year, but
he was also a rookie. I mean, I think part of it is that what you're going to get with Minshew.
Yeah.
You don't for sure with AOC. So the Raiders also listed both Michael Mayer and Brock Bowers as starters. One thing I didn't mention about these depth charts is that certain teams do it differently. Some will list a starting fullback, some have 3 wide receivers, some have 2 wide receivers. So the Raiders actually listed 12 personnel, so 2 tight ends as they're starting, and so they listed both of those guys as starters.
They drafted him in the first round. They have to list him.
Right.
They can't do that as a backup. Come on.
Right. The Chargers, they listed their starting running backs as Gus Edwards or J.K. Dobbins. So, there's been so many big questions about J.K. Dobbins. He's on a $50,000 guaranteed contract right now. So, maybe he'll get himself paid. Maybe he'll prove himself. And Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins were a useful tandem in Baltimore, so maybe they're going to run that back. At tight end, they listed Hayden Hurst or Will Dissly. Don't really care for fantasy purposes, but I thought I'd mention it. And then at wide receiver, they listed Josh Palmer, DJ Chark, and Quentin Johnston as their starters, and have Ladd McConkey as a backup. Now, I don't know that. I think this is one of those Harbaugh rookie earn your spot things, because I would just be shocked if that happened.
Yeah, and it's not going to be a pass heavy offense anyways, so it really doesn't matter who they list as wide receiver, next man up type of thing. But I think McConkey's going to get his chance, and we'll see.
All right, well, that takes care of the AFC. We'll see how all these actually pan out, but it's fun to take an initial look.
It's fun to kind of get an idea of who should be on my radar and who who can you sneak in off of waivers and all those, even though Aaron's already taken everybody that's worthwhile.
Everybody.
Except for one.
Yeah, except for the one you stole. All right. So we'll come back next week and do the NFC.
Yes, sir.
See you later, Drew.
Cheers.
Cheers, bud. Bye.
See ya.